I love your background, Joe.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Hey, I gotta say, I love your Back to the Future poster in the background.
Oh, you like that?
Yeah, I do. I do. Of course, I'm about your age too. I'm 43, so we're about from the same generation.
Yeah, I'm kind of I have a Raiders of the Lost Ark poster on the other side of my room. So I don't know if you can see it here. Let me see that.
I see it now. Yeah.
So I'm kind of an 80s pop culture kid. I mean, that was my generation. So
how old are you, sir?
I'm 51.
Yeah, I'm 43, so yeah, we're from the same decade, pretty much.
Oh, from the same decade. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
All right. Wes, how you doing?
Doing well. Good morning so far.
Good morning. Good morning. And Pat.
Hey, Joe, how's it going?
Hey, never seen you before.
I was at the meeting last September.
That
Last week, yeah.
Oh, wow. I got a terrible memory.
That's okay.
So, well, thank you all for joining. I mean, usually with these Zoom things, you got to give people a couple of minutes to join. So, I figured we'd wait a minute or so. And yeah, here comes Chris. So I just, I'm glad y'all could show up, man. I was thinking, wow, did I do this for nothing?
We
You
gotta
never
thank,
know. You never know who's going to show up.
we gotta thank Chris for all our Zooms. I live in Indiana, and I enjoy watching all the Zooms you guys have. So it's
Well, we
good to
try.
see.
Chris, how you doing?
Doing good this morning.
You excited about the game tonight?
Let's talk about the game last night. U of H pulling one out the last second. My poor
No,
wife
you
at
know,
U of H, she was depressed, and all of a sudden I said, "No, it's going to work out." And sure enough, it worked out. I didn't have no idea it was going to work out. I just trying to make her feel good, and it turns out they did it.
Yeah, that was an incredible finish.
That seems to be the theme of the season, though, don't it? You get down and you try to make this crazy comeback in the fourth quarter. I mean, I don't know what's going on with that team.
Once they pulled that onside kick, I said, "Okay, they got it now," because somehow the quarterback got plugged in, and he became a whole new man there in the fourth quarter.
Could somebody pause for a minute and enlighten this Hoosier about what you're talking about?
We're talking about University of Houston college football.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I think the biggest problem, actually, Chris, with our team is that our dynamite freshman running back from last year, he's not playing. He tore his ACL, so he's out for the whole season. So
Yeah,
McCaskill, I think that was his name.
Yeah, that's tough in college when you get a star player injured, because there's usually the drop off to the next guy.
Yeah,
is a long way off. Unless you're Alabama, then the drop off is pretty significant.
So speaking of which, are you nervous about tonight?
We're going to talk about something. Let's talk about the weather. Let's talk about anything else but that. I'm not nervous. I just don't want to. We're going to get beat. I just want to get embarrassed, and that's what I'm concerned with is getting embarrassed. I mean, it's one thing if they beat you 42-21, but if you just look like you have no idea what you're doing, then it's just kind of like $95 million man can't do anything.
Right. So
shall we talk about the Astros?
Hey, well, first of all, let's say hello to Peter, right? Hey, Peter, how's it going? So, thank you. Well, welcome everybody. This is our. We might have more people join in later, but this is our. I believe, Chris, this is our first ever time to do something like this, where we're meeting the newest chapter members, and we want to hear your interest, why you joined SABR, what do you expect from me, what do you expect to get out of SABR, what do you expect from all of us, and anything we can do to make your experience better, just let us know. So we're going to start off with, well, apparently I've met both of you. I forgot that. I remember Wes. Both of you went to our last meeting, so I just wanted to say, as Maxwell shows up with his Astros hat, so welcome Maxwell from Canada.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here. I was having some trouble signing in this morning, but here I am. And although Joe Musgrove may be ashamed to wear his Astros World Championship ring, here's somebody who's not.
Well, it just seems to be the Mike Fiers effect all over again. Maybe he just felt like he just wanted to say something, but he still has it. He still wears it. So
he still likes the bonus he got with it. So if I unfold my fingers, guess which one's for Joe Musgrove?
Exactly. So I almost hope we get to meet the Padres in the World Series, if I'm being optimistic.
I'm sure.
I think I'm more optimistic about meeting the Padres in the World Series than the Mets.
Did Musgrove say something about the Astros?
Yeah, he was saying that it doesn't feel right wearing his ring, but he still wears it. Somehow it feels tainted, I guess. But again, he still wears it. So, it's all right. All of us who follow the press and know the stories over the last couple of years know the real story behind electronic sign stealing throughout the league. So that's fine. But anyway, we don't have to worry about the Astros until the 11th. We might end up playing the Mariners. So if things keep going the way they're going, which is kind of surprising, but we'll see how today goes. So let's start off, and Herb is with us. Hey, Herb. Our esteemed vice president.
I do.
Hey, so all of you know Herb, right?
Hey, Herb.
Hello.
So Wes or Pat, if you just want to introduce yourself, say why you decided to join SABR. Did I corner you at the convention, Wes, to make you join or something like that?
Well, yeah, I'll jump in. It's been something for the last 10 years. I thought, yeah, I should do that, and just never done it. The fact that there's a 30-minute drive between here and downtown, I'm in the Woodlands, kind of held me back a little bit, but I'm glad I've joined. I started following baseball in the late 60s, early 70s. I was born in Houston, so the Astros were a natural team for me. And I've been an Astro fan since I knew about baseball. At the time, I could have chosen Jimmy Wynn or Larry Dierker as my favorite player, and I ended up choosing Dennis Minke. So Dennis Minke.
Wow, interesting choice.
Dennis Minke.
Yeah.
Why?
I had 3 baseball cards: Dennis Minke, Jim Wynn, and Doug Rader. So in a 10-year-old's mind, that one of those was going to be my favorite player. And in a spring training game, he, Wynn, and Rader each hit a home run, but for some reason, Jimmy Wynn was the obvious choice, but I picked Minke. So
you would have been upset about the Joe Morgan trade when it happened.
I was, yeah, that was devastating. Yep, but it's all worked out. I always enjoyed reading about baseball. As a kid, I was just always reading baseball, and just loved the sabermetric aspect. The Bill James, big Bill James fan, and studying all the numbers. My degree was engineering, so I just really enjoyed putting together a sport I loved with the numbers that I loved. It made a great fit for me.
Good. Well, Wes, if it's any consolation, I think I told you this in Baltimore. You live in the Woodlands, and it's a long drive for you, but I actually live north of you.
Is
You
that
know, in
right?
between.
Oh, I appreciate that. Okay.
In between Conroe and Cleveland. So
Yeah.
So I have a longer trip, and I have to go to U of H 4 times a week. So that's from my house to U of H is 51 miles. But
Yeah.
Hey, when you're a professor at U of H, you got to do what you got to do.
Right.
So yeah, so I know about the long trip. But I think as Chris has said in the past, and Herb, I think we've talked about this before, we kind of wanted to have a place where we met that's kind of centralized, you know, in the Houston area.
Sure.
And because Houston is in many ways the size of some states, I think it's that large. It's kind of hard finding a place to centralize for some people. So I'm glad you finally decided to join us. And let me ask you though, and I guess I'll ask everybody. I wonder if you were like me, because my dad worked at the Astrodome when I was a kid. Okay. And so, you know, that's kind of how I fell in love with it. He would always go, and back then employees could let their families in for free and stuff like that. And then I started getting Baseball Digest as a kid and reading all of those. So was I the only person that did that? So
Love the Baseball Digest, cover to cover.
yeah. And then let me ask you, were you just a National League fan? Because I wasn't. You know, I love baseball so much. I was a true Astros fan through and through. But since from Houston, and you know, the big Oiler-Cowboy rivalry, I would never cheer for a team from Dallas. So I said, you know, I got to be an American League fan because I love baseball. Okay, so this is how, and this is a connection Maxwell knows. This is why I decided when I was young to become a Toronto Blue Jay fan in the American League. So those were my teams that I followed. But through and through, I'm an Astros fan. I bleed orange. But over the years, you know, I kind of followed the Blue Jays too. So were you like that or no?
I never had an American League team. I enjoyed reading and following the American League, but no, it was always Astros in the National League.
Okay.
And All-Star Game was always National League.
Yeah, I guess I'm the weirdo. I understand, but
That's a good approach to have.
so was it Gene Elston and everybody else as far as radio announcers?
It was Gene Elston. Yeah, a little past maybe, but yeah, Gene Elston was I was a big Elston fan. Never warmed up to Milo.
Oh, really? Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I remember it was Gene Elston for me, and then I graduated from high school, and I left. I joined the Air Force, and I went to the West Coast during the 90s, and I come back, and it's just strictly Milo, and I'm like, what happened to Gene? You know,
Yeah.
it took a little while for me to get used to Milo, but he was great. You know,
Yeah.
he was a great guy. So, well, Wes, welcome. Is that, have you seen our website, sabrhouston.org?
No, I guess I haven't.
Okay.
Yeah, I need to check it out.
Okay. Well, here in a minute, after we talk to Pat, I'll kind of show y'all some of the stuff we're doing, and let you know that any of you who are interested in baseball, no matter if you want to share some of your thoughts, memories, we have a newsletter, we have a website, we have a lot of stuff, and we're always willing to have people at the meetings just get up and say, hey, what do y'all think about this? When I was a kid, this, that, and the other. And the good thing about that, especially you, Wes, since you've been a fan so long, the times that Larry Durker shows up to the meeting, you could probably share a memory that him and Tal Smith, who's usually always there, and Bill Brown, they probably remember that memory. So I think it's nice to have those guys feed into that memory too. So okay, Pat, I met you at the meeting, but I forgot you.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm not that memorable. So I just moved to Houston over the summer. Originally grew up in upstate New York, about a half hour north of Cooperstown.
That's right. I remember you now.
Yeah. So I fell in love with baseball. So my parents were about 3 hours north of New York City. We had family friends had season tickets to the Yankees. So the fall of '95, the Yankees Mariners ALDS were at game 2 when Mattingly hits his last home run. I was 6 years old, hits his last home run at Yankee Stadium, place goes nuts. And I was like, okay, I'm hooked on baseball. My favorite player was Paul O'Neill, probably a terrible role model as a kid, but just the intensity, watching him destroy Gatorade coolers was something that I was like, all right, like the way that guy plays. And then the Yankee dynasty there was great watching. But then as I got, 10, 12 years old, it was no fun to root for the Yankees anymore as they won all the time. So naturally became a Mets fan and have been kind of regretting that decision ever since. The last couple of weeks have been rough. So
now I'm gonna take a guess because I haven't actually seen your shirt. Are you wearing a Bills shirt?
yes, yeah, I'm a Bills fan. So glutton for punishment.
Okay, all right. So that's funny. You mentioned that '95 season because again, when I was in the service, this was the birth of the internet. We really couldn't listen to all the games we wanted to at one time. So we kind of had to go with the radio, and I was stationed in Washington State in Spokane in '95, really from '93 to '97. So if I wanted baseball, it was the Mariners, over the radio, and it was Dave Newhouse, the Mariners announcer, and he was just as exciting as I would say Milo. I mean, he was something else. And I remember that '95 season. That the Mariners kind of shocked everybody. You had Griffey, you had Rodriguez, you had Jake Buhner, you had I'm drawing a blank. I think Randy Johnson was on that team, wasn't he?
Martinez, Edgar and Tino.
Yeah, Edgar. Thank you, Mr. DH. Thank you. And so that was that whole state was Mariners crazy, and so it's kind of funny that you mentioned that whole thing because I remember watching those games, and it was a wild series, the '95 postseason. So with the Mariners and Yankees. So, but oh well. So you've moved down here, you've lived here for a year, and you're a Mets fan.
Mm-hmm.
We can't convert you to be an Astros fan.
Well, I enjoy baseball in general. I root for the Astros. It's definitely helpful that they're good, enjoyable to go to the games and follow them. So
being someone that came from New York, and dealing with the New York media and the stories about the Astros, do you have a thought about this? I mean, you say you cheer for the Astros, but what do you think of them now?
Well, my thing, especially with the whole sign stealing thing, was just like steroids. Everyone was doing it. So to point the finger it was easy to point the finger for the national media because Houston doesn't have the following, right, that New York and LA and historically St. Louis does. So it was like, oh, who's this new kid on the block that we can make the bad guy, that we're all doing the same thing.
Yeah, and it's not like the Astros don't embarrass the Yankees in the postseason or anything.
Exactly.
So, yeah, most definitely. So I can understand that. But it's just I always like hearing these different perspectives. I was at the convention talking to Mark Armour. He's the one that he wrote that book. Actually, I have it right. I thought I had it. The one that he wrote with they did a presentation over it. Does anybody remember?
Intentional bulk, Joe.
Yeah, that. And I said, and I was talking to him at that part where they sell all the books about this whole thing. So we had a nice little conversation about it. So, Pat, I mean, what did you think of the meeting? Chris Rawls is kind of like your initiation into our chapter, and he's a very unique guest because of all this memorabilia he has, this portable Houston baseball museum. I mean, what did you think of that?
Oh, that was awesome. I could have sat there for days listening to him and some of those stories, especially not growing up in Houston and having a ton of understanding, some of the key stuff about the Astrodome, I knew a little bit about, in the Astros, but not having a ton of background, knowledge. That it was just super interesting. That was great to see.
And it was my idea, of course. It was my idea for him to bring the hot dog wrapper because, I love food. This authentic hot dog wrapper from the Astrodome. And that is true. That's the only thing I asked him to bring. But of course, he brought everything, and it was, unfortunately, Larry had an event Dirk had an event, so I was hoping Dirk could show up, but he had told me before he does a lot of charity stuff. So he was out doing that because it was kind of a Larry Dirker theme night.
Being
You know,
around
so-
the area, I was wondering what that experience is like with the portable museum there. With the portable museum, what's it like to go there? Or does it-
Well, as he said, Chris said, he usually sets up the whole museum up at schools and things like that. And the presentation, presentation usually goes on for hours because it's a lot of kids that come in and parents and stuff like that. But considering our meeting was only an hour and a half, we got the condensed version.
Well, what is the full version like?
I don't know. I've never been to it, but I have no idea. But Chris did say when he first started the meeting, and you can watch the if you haven't seen it, it's on our YouTube channel. I've uploaded the previous meeting, but he said for me to sit here and talk about the history of baseball in this city to a bunch of SABR people who basically wrote the history of the history of baseball in this city would be kind of a waste of time. So he just sort of made it a Larry Dirker theme night, which I thought was a really good job. But but Ryan, travels around and goes to different schools, and he has his own tour business, and he used to work for the Astros too. So yeah, he said to me and everybody, the event usually takes all day, so the kids tend to love it.
I heard the presentation, but the reason I asked questions was because I didn't have the background that you guys had. I think one of the bad things he did was assume that everybody was local. Everybody listening was local, and that's not true. And I was just kind of lost. Like, wait a minute, well, I'm not local.
Okay. Well, maybe we can have Chris back, or I can have like a separate interview with him and kind of post that on our YouTube page, kind of help some people out.
That'd be great. That'd be a great idea, Joe.
Yeah, Maxwell, go ahead.
One of the things I was just thinking of when you were talking about bringing something up with either Larry Dirker or Tal Smith or Bill Brown, we actually did something like that with our SABR chapter. I was involved with, for people who don't know, I was involved in the planning side for 12 years for the SABR chapter in Toronto. And one year we had Jerry Howarth come to the meeting.
Yeah.
And we got everybody to introduce themselves and to say what their favorite moment in Blue Jays history was. And then Jerry would talk about broadcasting that game.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember what the other people picked, but I picked the game. I remember the exact date. It was June 4th, 1989. The reason I remember it is I was there. It was they were playing the Red Sox in Fenway Park. The Blue Jays had taken a 10-0 deficit to the Red Sox and came back to win. They actually won that game 13-11. And so that got the ball rolling. Jerry, what do you remember about that game? And then everybody else asked about their most memorable games.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's sometimes our meetings kind of, we get sidetracked a lot sometimes, and it kind of goes into these memories, especially when, somebody like Larry Megan shows up, who has these stories about Babe Ruth and Jackie Robinson. And then, when Dirk is there, he'll usually tell a story. And I remember when Bob was president, he would often let Tal tell some stories and Bill Brown tell some stories. And that kind of leads to more conversations, which is one of the great things about this chapter, is that we have so many people involved that have a direct connection with the local team and other baseball teams. Bill Brown used to be the radio announcer for the Reds, or he did some work for the Reds, and Tal Smith, of course, worked for several teams, the Yankees included. So it's not just a Houston-centered chapter. So we have a lot of this way we can kind of bring everybody else in. Even if you're not local, you're just not going to get the Houston Astros story. I think that we're a chapter that's we have kind of like Houston. We have many people from many different backgrounds that have all these different stories, and that's kind of where I want to take it moving forward, because I had a talk with Greg Lucas before our September meeting, who was talking about one of the former members who now broadcast, I think it's Ira, who now broadcast hockey games in Atlanta. And he was saying one of the reasons he quit coming to our meeting is because he's a Yankees fan. And the meetings used to be all about the Astros. And Greg says, well, ever since kind of Joe took over, it's not necessarily like that anymore, you know, because I like to talk about what's going on in the game. Now, I'll talk about the Astros a lot because, again, it's my favorite team. It is a Houston chapter, but I try to bring everybody else in. So, because as we all know, there's so many different stories about baseball, you know, that you can tell, and the stories will never end. Even if you tell the same stories over and over and over again, the story of baseball will, you know, you could just sit here for years and talk and talk and talk. But anyway, let me just show y'all our website. And I'm at my house. I'm not at U of H, so if my internet kind of kaputs, I'm sorry, because I do live out in the country. Can all of you see that? Can all of you see the SABR Houston website?
Just says Joseph Thompson started to, oh, there we go.
There, now we got it.
There's Tal.
Okay. All right. So Wes, you were asking about this. Pat, in case you're interested, here's our website. We're always trying to improve it. Bill Brown, the reason you see Tal is Bill Brown wrote a series of articles for our newsletter, and I'll show you our newsletter in a second. Wrote a series of articles about the life of Tal Smith. And I tried to put up the extended versions of some of these articles on our website. And here's one of those. Here's like part one. So if you click on it, it'll take you to part one of the story. So you can get like the full story here. And again, I'm sorry, I'm in the country here. So that's why I like being in town to do my meetings. To do our meetings. So, but here's kind of the whole story here. The whole story is a lot longer than what can fit in the newsletter. So you kind of get the whole story here. But with our website here, we have all these different links at the top. The about is just like the different chapter members, the chapter officers, if you want to get in touch with us. The chapter meetings link. This is usually a link that has all of our links to our YouTube videos going all the way back to really when COVID started, because it was because of COVID that we started using Zoom and having video recordings of all of our meetings. And we've uploaded those to YouTube. So you can watch replays of our chapter meetings, and we meet every month going back to 2020. So here's our chapter newsletter link. You have all the different newsletters. We have a new one coming out in the fall. So if any of y'all want to write something for the newsletter, the due date for articles is October the 15th. Speaking of which, I have to write a new president's message, and I'll show you the newsletter here in a second. But here's a link for those, the current one and the past ones.
Joe, I talked to Scott McKay just the other night, and I think they're going to extend the deadline on that. So
okay, for the fall,
probably till the end of the month. So
okay, all right. The Pecan Park Eagle is kind of a tribute to one of our former members who was Dr. Bill McCurdy, who recently passed away. He was a chapter member for the longest time. He was a U of H grad. We used to talk a lot, and he was the chapter historian. And he would write articles not just about baseball, but about Houston history, about media history, stuff going all the way back to the 50s, because Bill grew up in Houston and he was a big Houston Buffs fan. You know, and as some of you, or probably all of you know, the Buffs were the Cardinals' minor league team. So, which explains why some of the old timers here in Houston are not just Astros fans; they're also Cardinals fans. You know, So, and Bill was one of those. So you can read a lot of his articles. They go all the way up to about a week before he passed away when he wrote his last article. So these go back for years. The vintage team here in Houston with the chapter, we have our own vintage team, the Houston Babies. We play by 1860s old baseball rules, which means we have no gloves. We usually meet twice a year to play a couple of teams in the area. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, that is just fun to see a bunch of guys out there playing old style baseball. We'll dress up in some old style uniforms. Let me just show y'all what this looks like. Our last contest was at the last October, but you can see here's our uniforms. Pretty nice. So we usually play the Barker Red Sox. Another chapter member runs this Red Sox team. So we usually get together and go out to the George Ranch Historical Park out there in Richmond and play some games for a lot of the people that show up that just kind of walk around. They have like festival days. They walk around and they watch, oh, this is nice. So they'll sit there and watch a game for a little bit. Here's some baseball trivia. As you all know, the SABR members, there's a lot of baseball trivia is kind of a big thing. And even at the convention, we have a big trivia contest every year. Personally, I'm not really into trivia. I like it, but I'm not, as I've found out over the years, I'm not very good with baseball trivia. I think I've been a member since 2010. And the way I found out about the Houston chapter was an Astros Fan Fest. And the SABR chapter had their own like little booth that the Astros let them set up. And I just happened to be walking by and I saw the SABR and I started talking to Bob Durrell and Bill McCurdy. And I thought it was a great organization. And I was getting ready to start graduate school. And I've just been fascinated with it. And I was talking to them for a little bit. And of course, being the big Astros fan, I signed up immediately. And one of the things they did is they had a trivia contest that day. And if you won the trivia contest, you won a prize, so I did what I could. I answered, they were all fill in the blank. So there was like 15 questions and I answered 3 of them. And I came back about an hour and they were like, hey, you won the contest. So I guess I was like, really? I won the contest. So I won a book, I won a prize, and I was hooked ever since. So since that trivia contest, we have one every month, and this is 12 years now. I think I've won a total of 3 trivia contests in 12 years.
What book did you win, Joe?
I won I believe I still have it. It was a history of sports writing, national sports writers. It wasn't just about baseball, it was sports in general. I have it somewhere. Anyway, yeah, I still have the book. So I thought I had it. But yeah, I still have it and read through it. But it's kind of like my origin story of joining SABR. That's why I keep that book. So, but anyway, so that's how I joined SABR. Also, here's we have a link for our YouTube channel. So if you click on this link, it'll take you to YouTube and it'll show you again all of our videos going back to 2020. Again, I'm sorry for the internet speed. Just kind of what you got to deal with living in the city. We have all of our meetings. Here's just a few examples. David Krell talked to us about his 1962 book. This is at the chapter meeting. An old girl who was part of the Hot Pants Patrol for the Philadelphia Phillies, Arlene Lassen. She gave us her story back in June. Here's Ted Meyer. He's a labor lawyer in Houston, and he wrote a book about organizations and the great organizations in baseball history and what that can teach us about business management, business leadership. It's a fascinating presentation. And in fact, Ted and Bill recently had an event talking about the history of baseball in Houston just about a week and a half ago. So it's good if you haven't had a chance to look at that. We went to one of the things we like to do at least 2 or 3 times a year is if we can't go to an Astros game because it's so expensive, we like to go out and see the Space Cowboys, the former Skeeters. And we'll usually have a meeting there and we'll meet up with the GM or somebody else. Gerald Sanchez, who's the radio voice for the Space Cowboys, will talk with us. And I don't actually record those meetings. I usually just take pictures, and this is just like a slideshow of this. And then here's Maxwell. I forget. Oh, this is when we had a meeting with about the documentary of the Negro Leagues and some Astros like Bob Watson and Jimmy Wynn were a part of that. So we have again a lot of videos here, and again some trivia, and probably the most important thing. But since you're all members, here's the join the Larry Decker SABR chapter. If you click on this, it'll take you a link to SABR where it tells you a lot of stuff about SABR and how you can join and stuff like that. So, oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to show y'all the newsletter. I apologize for going back and forth. Let me show you the newsletter. The newsletter comes out 4 times a year. And if you go here and click on it, here's what it looks like. Here's some previous newsletters. Here's the one from winter 2022. So if you click on it, it'll take you to a link. And if you've never seen the newsletter, here you go. Our newsletters are usually 6 pages long. And it's just different things going on in the chapter, different articles. Here's another edition of Tao's Life of Tao. And Mike Vance, who's a historian in the city, talks about Hall of Fame not electing Bonds and Clemens. Let me see. David Jerome, who has talked to us, one of our largest Zoom meetings ever was David Jerome and Bill Verdon, former Astros manager who recently passed away. Bill Verdon was our guest. We had I think upwards of 65, 70 people on that Zoom meeting with Bill Verdon talking to our chapter, and David Jerome was there. He recently wrote a book about the life of Bill, and that should be coming out soon. So here is this article from David, and picture of the crew here. So there's a lot of good stuff here for this newsletter. So my problem is I tend to talk too much. So I'm going to open it up to all of y'all. So do any of y'all have any questions? Is there something that you want to get out of SABR that we can help you with, or is the biggest problem I think sometimes SABR has is people get excited in the beginning, but then they sort of lose interest over time, and I don't really want that to happen with our new members. So is there something that you would like us to talk about in the chapter meetings, something you'd like to be more involved with, something you think that maybe we should do more of, that would make your experience better with SABR? Anything that you want to write about, anything we should study, any projects or anything we can help you with? So
I know for me right now, I just want to kind of enjoy the ride. I think you guys are doing a very good job with just all the things you have available. There was a friend of mine from Dallas who participated in the last virtual meeting, the September virtual meeting, and he said, boy, our chapter is nothing like that. So he was really impressed, and I was too. That I think you bring a lot of energy, Joe, a lot of excitement, and a lot of different things to the table. So yeah, right now I'm just going to enjoy the ride.
Okay, and go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, I was going to say the same for me, because I was a SABR member back in New York, and the chapter I was met once a year, and it was very like not a lot of people involved. It was kind of more of join for the web resources and the ebooks and things like that you get through SABR. But seeing how active this chapter is and all things going on is great. So yeah, kind of just enjoying the ride and getting to know people is what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, Pat. As a SABR member, you do have access to. Have you been to SABR's website? Wes, have you been? Okay, so you have access to the whole library and everything like that. The newest book that came out, one about the 93 Blue Jays and their World Series run. If you want to participate in any of those things, there's plenty of opportunities for you to write and stuff like that. I will say this. Go ahead, Ryan.
What is Clemente?
Oh, the newest one is Clemente. Yeah, but the one right before that is Clemente just came out, didn't it? Yeah. But Maxwell, this one's been out for what, just about a month?
It came out at the end of August to coincide with the 30-year reunion of the 1992 team.
Yeah.
You obviously didn't order yours through the Pony Express because you had your copy. I probably ordered mine around the same time you did, and I'm still waiting. But we actually are having a book launch for it in Toronto a week from Sunday, and I plan to go to the meeting. And some of the authors, like Adrian Fung, who was the editor of that book, he's going to be there, and some of the authors as well.
Yeah, we have a couple of these. Hold on, I'm sorry if I just wanted to show y'all. SABR does these kind of books all the time. A few years ago, this is one about the Astrodome, stories from the Astrodome. You haven't had a chance to read that. And Maxwell, you know a lot about this one. Gave a presentation.
I've never seen that one before in my life, actually.
But the history of expansion baseball. The reason I have these three in my hand right here, I have contributed to each of these three. So if you look at those, if you don't have to buy copies of it. Of course, you as a SABR member, you get a free e-copy of it. You can read the stories about it. In this one, I wrote about the Kansas City Royals. In the Dome book, I wrote a couple of stories. One of those stories is actually the 22-inning game between the Astros and the Dodgers back in '89. Funny thing about that game was that was also the very night the very night that game happened, I graduated from high school. So that was kind of a funny story about that game. So I kind of tie that into a little bit. Now, I didn't go to the game, of course. I was graduating from high school that night. June 4th, 1989. So
which was the same day as the Blue Jays Red Sox game I was talking about earlier.
It's crazy, ain't it?
I'm actually speaking, for those of you who missed my presentation in Baltimore about the book, I'm actually giving the same presentation by Zoom to the Milwaukee chapter on October 19th.
I'll be there.
All right, we'll look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah. So June 3rd. Oh, I'm sorry. The game that would never end. Yeah, I wrote two stories, June 3rd, 1989, June 4th, 1989. So it was just a fascinating stuff. I think the game finally ended with Tommy, believe it or not, Fernando Valenzuela was playing first base for the Dodgers. And it was a crazy thing. It was a crazy little bloop single. And the game finally ended. And Vin Scully said, I can't believe it. The game's finally over. That kind of stuff. There were still fans at the Dome that night. So it's a crazy thing about baseball. And then, of course, the Blue Jays. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, it's easy to become a part of that. They'll let you write any kind of stories or memories. I will say this, being someone in academia who has to deal with editors all the time and things that are writing, just because this is SABR, let me tell you something about the editors of SABR. They are tougher than any academic editor I have ever run across. I mean, they are the toughest group. And so it's funny being at, you know, when I talk to some of my colleagues at U of H, they're talking about, well, SABR, that's not really, let me tell you something, you know, they kind of maybe look down or something like that about it. And I said, let me tell you something about the editing process with SABR. I guarantee you, I'll just tell them stories. I mean, the Blue Jays one right here, I had to edit that thing 10 times before I could finally convince the editor. I think it was Carl Riker that, you know, I'm sticking with what I got here. You know, he kept trying to erase some stuff and this, that, and the other, but it was kind of tough, but it was fun. It makes you a better writer, you know. And Bill Nowlin, who seems to come out with a new book every week or something like that, he's a great editor. There's always something to do with SABR. You know, your little niche in SABR, believe it or not, you may think nobody cares about it, but there is somebody out there that cares about it. Okay. And if you ever want to talk at the meeting, if you want to give a little presentation, hey, you're all more than willing, okay, to talk. You don't have to be a super, that is one thing I have found out about this chapter. You don't have to be a Larry Durker or Tal Smith to give a presentation. Anybody can give a presentation, okay? And we're all willing to listen because we're all baseball fans. You know, we are. And speaking of which, you know, depending on the topic, it doesn't necessarily have to be baseball specific, as long as it has a baseball tie to it, of course. And speaking of which, our October meeting is Dan Taylor, and he's going to talk about the baseball life of this guy, Kenny Washington. You know that name. And this is the book, but he's going to talk about the baseball life of Kenny Washington, or as he calls him, the Jackie Robinson before Jackie Robinson. He had an opportunity to be the guy, you know. So I'm going to read some of this. So it should be a fascinating story. And since you're the new members, I probably have no problem announcing this, but our guest in November is going to be Terry Poole, our special guest. Yes, the Terry Poole. You know, if you're an Astros fan, you know that name. Canada's favorite baseball son, right, Maxwell?
Terry Poole's Canadian? I had no idea. Blame Alan Ashby. It's his joke.
Yes, Terry Poole was he was an Astro. He was also a coach for many years of U of H Victoria. So he will be our guest in November. And in January, it was originally slated for December, but Allison Footer, who does a lot of writing for MLB, she used to do a lot of writing for the Astros. She will be our guest. It looks like January now. She was going to be our guest for December. Oh, what you got there, Maxwell?
It's a picture of Terry Poole rounding third and heading for home, being congratulated by 4 of his teammates and signed by all 5 of them.
How did you get a hold of that?
Under the Radar Sports. It was a signing in Philadelphia. Somebody told me about this, said, you know, you like the Astros, you might be interested in this. I said, yes, I am interested in this. And
What game is that, Maxwell?
that's the 1982 Houston Astros.
Ah,
And
I
that
will
was
say
it.
this: when I found out, when I found out over the years, now I find that former players are going to speak with us. When I wasn't the president, I was, you know, and again, I just became president January 1st. I feel kind of like I'm in a room full of the gods or something like that when these guys are talking. We've had Kevin Bass talk to us. We've had Jim DeShays talk to us. We've had Jimmy Wynn, of course, talk with us. We've had Shane Reynolds, former Astros pitcher, talk with us. And, you know, I'll just, like, for example, when Shane Reynolds was talking to us, I had a ticket stub of a game that he pitched at. And I brought it to it. And I said, Shane, man, hey, can you sign this for me? And so I have that signed ticket stub from Shane Reynolds. And when I found out about Terry Poole, I went out and bought me a couple of baseballs and I'm gonna have Terry Poole sign a couple of
Nice.
baseballs for me. So, he was one of my favorite players growing up. If you are a Houston sports guy like I was, Pat, it may be like, who the hell is Terry Poole? But he's kind of a big name down here. But did you have a favorite player, Pat, that you wanted to have an autograph for?
Like I said, probably Paul O'Neill was the one that, like I said, he was one of the guys that got me hooked.
Okay. Do you know where he is, or do you?
He's not, I know he's still in New York, or I think he lives with his family in Ohio. I know he does a lot of broadcasting for the Yankee Network.
Okay. So I know a lot of chapters. They're very active with getting former players and things like that to come talk. And we've just kind of been lucky here in Houston. We have so many former players here that live here, and we have so many connections with Tal Smith, Bill Brown, Larry Durker, all these guys. Bill Brown is responsible for getting us Allison Footer and Terry Poole. Okay, so. I'm interested to see who else he can come up with.
Because of your connections, Joe, I have to say this: your chapters is one of the best within SABR. I've been all over the country, and your chapters is definitely one of the best. And I do have to say, one of my biggest thrills within SABR was at a Chicago meeting one time. I'm a huge Cub fan, and they were having Bobby Dernier on, and Bobby Dernier.
This is a good story.
Yes, I think you were there. I think you were there, Maxwell.
I was.
You were, and unbeknownst to a lot of us, Ryan just hit the call, and they just sat there for an hour while we just talked in topics into the chat, and we were like Justin Bieber teenage girls were like, what's going on? What just happened? Oh my God! It's just unbelievable. You feel like you're 12 years old again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about baseball, especially joining SABR. There are a lot of times throughout these years where I feel like I'm 10 or 12 years old again. Like I held up a ball to Larry Durker, and I'm like, "Please, Mr. Durker, can you sign this ball for me?" I'm 51 years old, and I think I asked him that, several years ago. I'm a 40, but I'm looking at him and I feel like I'm a 10-year-old kid. And now Larry's like, he knows me by my first name. And I'm like, what kind of world is this? This is, and Maxwell just walked away and I had a joke for him.
Did you ever think Larry Durker would know you by your
Ryan.
name? Sorry.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Did you ever think Larry Durker would know you by your first name, Joe?
Did I ever think that Durker would call me by my first name? No.
Yeah. I'm sorry, you were saying something?
No, exactly. It was just, but like I was going to say, Maxwell, when I meet these people and I have somebody like Durker and Bill Brown call me by my first name, and that's just sort of happens with SABR. You just get to know that these people are just people. And they start calling you by your first name. I feel like I'm in a Seinfeld Bizarro world. It's like, just
Al
doesn't make
Smith and
sense.
Bill Brown don't call me by my first name. They call me by my initials. Every time I get an email from them, it's MK. Here's something else I picked up at a SABR meeting in Houston. Tal Smith, Bob Aspermonte, and Larry Durker, all signed.
Yeah. So if you want to get something signed, I mean, you want to get Terry Poole to sign something for you, Pat, Wes, show up to the November meeting. I think our guest in October will be joining us via Zoom. So, and by the way, you have a connection in New York, Pat, or so if you know anybody, and it doesn't have to be a professional player. It could be a college player, a high school kid, anybody that wants to talk to us about baseball. Feel free to invite them. I mean, we'll let them talk. Wes, same thing with you. You know anybody? It doesn't. I've wanted to try to corner the U of H baseball coach and have them talk. The little league guys out in Bel Air, some of those guys. I want to try to get a hold of them one day and have them talk. Anybody you can think of. Okay, this is not just oh, this is just Astro specific. And this is, again, one of the things I want to do with the chapter. One of the biggest problems with the chapters I've heard over the years, and I've heard it not only from Bob, our former president, is that we got to get more young people involved. And so I think the best way to get young people involved is have young people speak. So anyone. So if you have any ideas, some of us, I met somebody in Cooperstown several years ago at a baseball symposium. The Cooperstown Symposium, they have, this is an academic thing, that they usually have a Memorial Day weekend every year out in Cooperstown. And this guy gave a presentation about the history of baseball video games. And I'm trying to find his business card because I wanted to talk to him. Now he's an academic, but I wanted to get him to come talk to us too.
Was it Gilbert Martinez?
No, it wasn't Gilbert.
Because he knows a lot about video games.
No, but I just thought, that would be neat. I'm not quite sure how it would go over with the whole crowd, but it would be neat for me.
Hey, Joe, have you ever had any luck getting Jesse Barfield to come to a SABR meeting? He's from Houston, or he lives in Houston.
See, Maxwell, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And Maxwell's another good recruiter from for guests. Arlene Lassen, right?
Yeah, I found Arlene.
Yeah, the Hot Pants Patrol Phillies girl, who, by the way, said that she had a lot of interesting, in the meeting, she's like, I have a lot of interesting stories about former players. She's kind of hinting at maybe somebody like Pete Rose or Mike Schmidt. She's like, I can't really say a lot of this, but let's just keep it on the hush hush. But if you read the book that she came out, that she wrote, trust me, that book is not baseball specific, although there's baseball stories. The book is called Hot Flashes.
She doesn't mention any names in the book, though.
No, she doesn't mention any names in the book. But if you know anything about baseball history and you read through those stories, you're like, I know who she's talking about. These are stories about those Phillies teams. But anyway, so we have a lot of stuff going on, and I'm always looking for new ideas. If anybody, I want to get more of the sabermetrics kind of people, business SABR analytics stuff involved too. We have a SABR analytics convention coming up in March. Do you guys get the email from SABR every week? This Week in SABR? You get that? Okay. So they just opened proposals for the baseball analytics conference. I think those are due December 1st or something. Proposals. Those of you who are into analytics, I don't know, Wes, Pat, I don't know if you're into analytics or anything. I don't know. Are y'all into that?
Yeah, I definitely enjoy it. I haven't taken advantage of the SABR stuff to a great degree.
And the highlight of each summer is the national convention that is this year going to be in Chicago. I went to one in 2001 when I just graduated from graduate school, and I met Bill James live and in person, and going.
Milwaukee, I was at that convention too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ryan's also talking about the national convention. I know SABR has a couple of conventions. The one I was talking about is the SABR Metrics one, where all the analysts show up. That's usually held in Phoenix, in Arizona. So that's good in March. You don't have to worry about getting snowed in Arizona, at least not yet. I don't think. You have to worry about that. But and every year the national convention, of course, changes cities. I've been to several. Believe it or not, the first convention I went to was the one I presented in here in Houston in 2014. So, and then I went to Pittsburgh in 2018. And then I went to Baltimore this last year. Now, I say that to say this. Again, I was in grad school at the time. And if you know anything about grad students, we have no money. I had a wife. My kids are all grown now. So I really had no money. But now that we're sort of empty nesters, it's a little bit easier now. But I know SABR also has, I didn't really know this at the time. I didn't really take advantage of it, but they also have scholarships and things like that. So, but now I feel happy. I can go to these conferences every year. And I'm looking forward to going to Chicago next year. I have found out that the Cubs are not going to be in town that week.
Correct.
Okay, it's the White Sox, which means we're going to a White Sox game. Okay, but I've decided, because it's July 5th through the 9th or 5th through the 8th or something like that. I've talked to my wife. We have family in Glenview in North Chicago. And I talked my wife into, let's go up a couple of days early. And we're going to go to a Cubs game and then spend the 4th of July with the family up there. And then I'll check in for the SABR and she can come home.
Hope,
You know,
hope you have a place to stay, Joe. The city's practically sold out of hotels already.
Really?
Yep. Because I was thinking of doing the same thing.
Okay. Well, we got family in Glenview, so we'll kind of
Oh,
see.
so you're covered.
We'll kind of see how that goes.
Do you know who the Sox are playing?
No.
The Blue Jays.
Interesting.
They're
Okay.
playing the Blue Jays and the St. Louis Cardinals.
Wow. All right. Okay. Well, that should be interesting. Well, it's usually a Friday night we go to the game.
Friday
isn't it?
night's the Cardinals.
Yeah. Okay.
Thursday
All right.
afternoon's the Blue Jays.
So that's kind of what's going on with us. I mean, we have a meeting in November, one in December, every month. I'm going to do this meet the new chapter members thing. Now that a couple of you showed up, I'm going to have another one probably in December, maybe. We'll kind of see how this goes. I think it turned out well. If just one of you show up, I'm happy for that. So I don't want y'all to feel, I know when I first joined SABR, I felt kind of lost. I didn't really know anybody. I was kind of hesitant to show up to meetings because, believe it or not, I was a shy person. Kind of grown out of that. But
Joe, can I make a
go ahead.
suggestion here? I really like this type of meeting. And one thing we could do other than just meet the new members is just have a meeting like this, just to talk baseball with no guest speakers or anything else, just kind of share our thoughts and ideas like that. The Hornsby chapter kind of does that frequently on their Zoom meetings. So it's just a nice change from the formal type meeting that we have at Spaghetti Western. So
I agree with her, but I think that's something you guys are missing. The people on Zoom are excluded from, and I really think that will really improve the chapter participation.
That sounds great. So I guess we can kind of close the meeting out by kind of going with Herb's advice. What do you think about the playoffs so far? Surprises?
yeah,
Next Scherzer done?
Mets might be done, but
Yeah.
Beat the Mets. Sweep.
but I'm glad the Astros don't have a best of 3. It's scary.
Right.
The short series, anything can happen.
I
Best
couldn't
of 5's
believe,
even scary.
I couldn't believe yesterday how pretty much every game had one of the starting pitchers went deep, like 7th or 8th inning. And the Cleveland game I had on, and I was like, oh, it's 2 hours and it was already in the 8th inning. I was like, this, not used to these quick games.
That might have been the shortest game of the year. 2
Yeah.
hours and 17 minutes. It's amazing. Can happen.
Yeah.
Especially when you have starting pitchers go deep.
Yeah.
So was anybody surprised by the results yesterday?
Surprised Scherzer got hit around like he did.
What about the Phillies Cardinals? Were you surprised by that?
Yes.
Surprising game, boy.
So one more win and it's done, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
For any of those teams.
So do y'all like this new format with this wild card round where all 3 games are in the hosting team's ballpark? Do you like that?
Yeah. I mean, it keeps it confined to a weekend instead of dragging it out. I mean, there's no need to drag out the wild card round when they drag out the next 3 rounds anyway. It was at first I was like, why are they having games on at 11 a.m. on Friday? But it was pretty cool to just sit and have a game on all day, and a game that meant something.
I don't know if I liked it in 20. I don't know if I liked it in 2020, but that was with the 60-game season. I think I like it more now because we had the 162 versus the 60.
Yeah, I think it also puts an emphasis on those wild card teams to to try and make sure they have the best record as possible so they can host these things. You know, because the games are in Toronto, right? The Toronto Mariners.
Yep, they're all in
So,
Toronto.
Yeah, so if the Mariners lose these next few games, I mean, the Mariners haven't been to the playoffs since 2001. So, you know, there's an opportunity that the Mariners won't have a playoff style format again. You know, now granted they won yesterday, so that means the Astros will play the Mariners if they win one of these two games. But if not, then the Mariners fans are just suffering again. If they don't get the root on their own home team. So I think it's one of those things. It's like, yeah, this is cool, but I think it really puts an emphasis. I think it's puts an emphasis on making sure you have the best record possible, so you can host some of these. So, anybody else? Maxwell had to go. So, we have any predictions? Are the Pat, are the Mets done? Are they going to come back?
I think they're done.
Okay. All right.
World Series.
Of course, that changes in 24 hours, right? They're heavily favored tonight, and if they win,
Yeah.
then you don't know. Maybe they're back.
Who's that?
Well, the Mets are heavily favored tonight, I think, with DeGrom going. And if they tie it up 1-1, then tomorrow it's a flip of the coin. So, you know, it changes very quickly.
How are
Yeah.
the Astros going to do this year, this postseason?
We're Astros fans. They're going to take home the crown, man. You know, that's what I think. You know, people can say what they want, but and there was a kind of a, if y'all didn't know, Brian T. Smith of the Chronicle, Herb, you probably know what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
Seems to have written a hit piece on the Astros, or at least on Jim Crane in the last week. And I didn't read the article, but my whole thing is like, really, man?
The timing was really weird.
The timing was really weird. So it's just,
I mean, I understand where he is coming from about not giving long-term, having contracts with Dusty Baker and Jim, is it clicked, I guess. But it's just a weird timing to put an article like that. I would have thought maybe in the middle of the year might have been more appropriate. But
doesn't he usually cover the Texans though?
he covers all the sports, I think. So.
Okay. Well, maybe, you know, the national media writers, they just something to write about. Let's crap on the Astros a little bit more. So let's do this. I don't understand the timing here, but you would have to say, as an Astros fan, and you know, all of us here, except maybe Ryan and Pat, will probably understand that this is truly the goal. As Tony Kemp was a guest for the Roger Hornsby winter meeting a couple of years ago, and I said, Tony, you know, you're a great guy, but to me, you are a part of the golden era of Houston Astros baseball history. I mean, this is a run that's not just very unique in terms. Well, I mean, it's something Houston sports fans have never seen, except maybe the Comets with that 4 WNBA championships in a row. But again, that's the WNBA. But still, I mean, Astros fans, I mean, sports fans in this city are not used to this. You know, we have a possibility of going to 6 straight ALCSs. I mean, that's like some Atlanta Braves, New York Yankees stuff.
I totally agree with you, Joe. I think that's why people are so defensive in Houston about all the sign stealing allegations, because of all the success the Astros have enjoyed.
Yeah. So this is some unique time. Go ahead.
And I think from the national standpoint is there's a lot of bitterness nationally to how the Astros built the team. You know, they had 2 or 3 just god awful seasons, but they, you know, developed great players. And it's the, you know, teams like, oh, we don't like that in New York and LA because they don't have the ability, you know, to have awful, you know, to have terrible teams, but the way the media is there. So it's almost like, oh, we're not happy that teams found a way to build this way and said, okay, we're capable of having a couple terrible seasons. They didn't have to, you know, I guess brought in Verlander as the last piece, but it's not like they brought in any real high price free agents. Everyone else was homegrown.
Yeah. And the bad name in baseball is Jeff Luhnow, and it was really him that kind of did this. The guy kind of outsmarted everybody, it seems like, because his legacy continues. But he had a reputation of being this, say what you want about him not, giving everybody the proper notification from the league and stuff like that. But I would say that it was, kind of, if we're thinking about somebody who really created this baby, I think it was Jeff Luhnow. I think it is. And the way he sort of tore the team down and built it from within, and his analytics team. So say what you want about sign stealing, but it was really, he came in and kind of changed it. So this whole negative aspect from the national media, yeah, this is not the way you're supposed to do this. These Moneyball guys are taking this game over, and this is ridiculous. And the Astros are just like, they're the poster for this new kind of baseball, and people don't like it. People don't like change. So, but you got Sig in Baltimore doing the same thing now. So go ahead.
I was just going to say that, I hate to be negative, but if the Astros lose to either Toronto or Seattle, this city is going to be really critical of the team, and they don't deserve to be that criticized, but they will be.
Yeah, they will be.
The expectations are just so high.
Yeah, we're almost spoiled.
Yeah, very spoiled.
Now,
I'll be quick to point out the Cubs did the tanking thing first. The Astros took it to a whole new level, and now the Cubs are coming back with younger players that that already starting to show up. So it can turn around real quickly. It depends on how aggressive you are.
Yeah. So, Pat, I would say good luck to the Mets, but it sounds like you've already given up on them. I hope not.
Yeah. The Grom's not pitched too well his last couple outings, and the way Scherzer looked awful last night. It's like, okay,
Okay.
There's no hope in getting super excited, optimistic. So,
And Pat, do you have any connection with San Francisco, or do you just like the background?
oh, just the background.
Okay.
Yeah, that was one of those unique days in San Francisco where the bridge is not covered with fog. So Ryan, you got a team that you're cheering for in the playoffs?
Not really. I'm just thinking about watching the season and seeing what unfolds, and I'm thinking the Braves might have a good shot again to do it. I mean, why not? I don't seem to have a team in this race, or it's pretty wide. It looks pretty wide open to me.
Okay. Herb and West, do I need to ask?
Go ahead.
All right. Thank you all for coming, and
Thank you.
I will. I'll probably write something up about this and post it. But thank you all for coming, and we'll have another one of these in December.
Sounds good.
So,
Great. Thank you.
all right. I'll talk to y'all later.
All right.
Good job.
See you
Have a
at
good
the October meeting.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Our meeting is October 17th.
And that's not going to change even if the Astros are playing that day.
That will change if the Astros are playing that day.
Okay.
Okay, that is the only thing here, because that's game 5 of the ALDS.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now they'd probably be stuck in the afternoon anyway, but you never know. That's assuming the Yankees go 5-2.
Yeah, but let's just hope it's a quick series.
Yeah.
No.
In the Astros' favor. Yeah.
In the Astros' favor, yes. So,
All right.
all right. See y'all at the
I'll
meeting,
take care.
or pay attention to my, or just watch for my emails. All right.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Have a good one.
Goodbye.
Bye.